Hello, darlings. Well, I'm depressed. This is not the video I intended to make today, nor is it the video that I promised you in yesterday's video, and indeed last night's live stream. The video I intended to make and the video that I promised you was Boaty's Saturday brunch. A continuation of that series, and this was going to be the poverty edition where I made beans on toast. And I didn't make that video because I didn't make that brunch because I'm depressed. And today I was too depressed to make and eat lunch. And for me, that's not a great sign, because if you know me, you know I love my food. Now, you might well say that it's perfectly normal and reasonable that you would be depressed. It's what we call a reactive depression. You are depressed because of factors in your life that you are reacting to. For example, you are divorced, you are in late middle age, and your body is falling apart, and you will probably die relatively soon. You live alone, you're lonely, you live beneath the poverty line, you are frequently cold, you are increasing, God almighty, this is cheerful, isn't it? You're increasingly in debt. You have no hope for the future. You have no surviving family. The list goes on and on to things that I might have a reactive depression to. But again, if you know me, you know that isn't so. Those are not things that make me depressed. Those are things that they're all true, but they are things that I mitigate and deal with normally quite successfully. No, what I think is going on, and it grieves me to say this because there are a lot of things, and you can't see, but I'm using inverted commas with my fingers. There are lots of things that I don't think really are things. But one thing that I'm having to conclude is a thing called SAD, Seasonal Affective Disorder. And again, I take issue with it because it's giving a name to something that I think is natural. I don't think it's a condition. I think it's a natural part of life. I think it is natural and normal that human beings feel glum in winter. The days are short. You're freezing your balls off. Historically, it's more difficult to hunt, and there's a fair chance that you might not actually survive until spring. It's no accident that some animals, and we're animals too, some animals hibernate to escape the winter, and I believe it's no accident that winter for human beings are littered with things like Christmas and Halloween and bonfire night, celebrations to try and lift the spirits, to give something to look forward to, something to help us get through the misery of another bloody winter. Now, I know about this. It's crept up on me. It doesn't seem to affect you when you're a younger chap. I don't remember it affecting me. Certainly when you're a kid, winters are brilliant. You go out sledging and doing stuff in the snow. When you're a young adult, you're getting drunk and having a lot of sex. And then suddenly you become middle-aged, and the old seasonal affective disorder kicks in with a bloody vengeance. Now, since I've been doing this YouTube lark, I have spoken about this. I've said that I know this happens to me during the winter, and this year I am going to fight it. I'm not going to let it consume me. And I've realised today, with my not having had lunch, that I have failed in this quest. Seasonal affective disorder has got me, and it's got me by the short and curlies. I am presenting with many, if not most, of the symptoms of depression. I am permanently tired. I am lethargic. My appetite is not where it normally would be. I have no motivation to do anything. Everything is just a struggle. Even the simplest little things like doing laundry, keeping a tidy home, it's all just too much for me at the moment. But of course it also affects other things. Any form of depression will affect how you deal with the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or indeed misfortune, fucking hell, that life will throw at you. And you know, the perfect example of that is how I'm dealing with this Airbnb shenanigans and that I've been banging on about. I'm not dealing with it terribly well at all, and that's just one example. I am overly reacting in an adverse way to virtually anything that life wants to throw at me. I lose a subscriber. It happens. But when you're under the cosh of the black dog of depression, you think, right, that's it. It's all pointless. I shall give it up and spend my days just lurking in bed instead. And you get the same feelings when a video doesn't do the views that you hope that it would do. And that's just one of a million examples that I could give you of how depression will make you react more adversely, more negatively, and to a greater degree. Oh, excuse me, hiccups. To anything that life bungs at you. So then the question is, how do you deal with this? How does one deal with this? How should one deal with this? Is there a way to deal with it? As I say, I believe it's why the biggest celebrations of the year come in the middle of winter. It's a thing that humanity have designed for themselves to get them through, give them a reason to cheer up, something to look forward to, something to celebrate. So, should one just muddle through winter? Should one just accept that, yep, for the next 3 months I'm going to be pretty much completely unproductive, I'm going to be miserable, I'm going to be fat and unhealthy, depending on how you react to depression, because some people try and eat their way out of depression, don't they? So do you do that? Do you just say, right, it's going to be absolutely crap for 3 months, I will accept that it's going to be what it is, and I will just get through it, make sure I do the bare minimums, go to work, pay the rent or pay the mortgage, eat enough to keep me alive, and wipe my bottom after I've had a poo, and have an occasional bath or shower. I'm sure that's what a lot of people do. I'm sure that's what I've done in the past. Of course, it also depends on your situation as to how you deal with it, doesn't it? I mean, for example, if one was fortunate enough or had been productive enough to have money, then one could make the most of winter. One could go skiing in St. Moritz, or one could bugger off to the Caribbean, or one could spend the winter somewhere a bit warmer, like Malta or Cyprus, or somewhere like that, or or America or Australia. Pick any place where winter is not as wintry as where you are. And if you didn't have money, but if you had a partner that you were really quite fond of, then you could spend the winter coming up with new and imaginative ways to podger each other senseless. That would be a way to get through it, wouldn't it? Plan a winter of podgering in as many different ways and different places as you possibly could, and it would cheer you up, it would release endorphins, it would keep you warm if you couldn't afford to have the heating up, because you do work up a bit of heat, don't you? But if you don't have a partner, then that is not available to you. Although it's a good thought, isn't it? If there are any ladies out there who fancy experimenting with pottering away the winter blues, do get in touch with me. Leave a comment below. Now then, there was a time when I did kind of find something that worked. Now, immediately after my divorce, I worked for Sainsbury's. It wasn't a fantastically well-paid job, but it paid the national living wage, and I did an awful lot of hours, an illegal amount of hours, and I was reasonably okay. I was able to pay my bills, and I was able to do this. Now, I found that October's normally okay, isn't it? I think it normally begins to really kick in at about this time, at about in November. But, depending on what's going on in your life, you can probably cope with November and December. You've got some celebrations, you've got the run up to Christmas, you've got the New Year. So what I used to do was in January, February, March and April, I discovered that I had just about enough money to go to the Maltese Islands every month for like 2 or 3 nights. In those days, obviously, I had paid holidays because Sainsbury's observed the legalities of being an employer. And Malta used to be really cheap. I would pay normally $19.99 each way to fly to Malta with Ryanair, good old Ryanair, from East Midlands Airport, and accommodation was really cheap. I would stay at the Dolmen Resort, my hotel of choice in Malta, and it would cost me like 60, 70, 80 quid for 3 nights in a really nice suite. I would hire a car from my friends in the village or town where I stayed, which was Aura in St. Paul's Bay. It would be and I had it down to a fine art. I would land in Malta, my car would be waiting for me in the car park. I would jump in the car. I know the island like the back of my hand. It's my second home, or it was. And I would head off to my hotel. I would catch up with my friends, and I would have a very enjoyable few days in the warmth. Even in January, it was very often 18, 19, 20 degrees, and it was lovely. In January, I would spend my birthday out there, and I even managed to make it a cost neutral thing by buying cigarettes, which of course are so much cheaper out there. And the savings I made on fags, it's before I realised that, you know, you could get under the counter cheap fags here. I was a bit naive back in those days. And the saving that you made on the fags paid for your trip. And those 2 or 3 nights, 3 or 4 days per month got you through it really nicely. As soon as you got back to the cold, miserable winter, you were already looking forward to and planning your next month's trip. And that worked a treat for me. But that stopped for... Why did that stop? The pandemic, really. Yeah, it stopped because of the pandemic. I was going to say it stopped because I got into a relationship with Boo. But of course, Boo and I went out there together once. And then the pandemic kicked in, and that kind of put paid to it, and I've been too poor to do it ever since. Shame, really. Genuinely did work quite well. Greetings, Honourable Bridge. Breathe in. So I'm pretty sure that this is something that is endemic across everybody. I'm sure that it's part of the human condition to be a little bit more glum, or to have the tendency to be a little bit more glum during the winter months. And I'm sure that that tendency will exacerbate anything else that would make you feel glum at any time of the year. And I'm sure that how negatively it affects you will be affected by many other factors, you know, like I've been discussing, you know, whether you are alone, whether you have people around you, whether you have an interesting and fulfilling job, whether you enjoy skiing, whether you can afford to bugger off to the islands, so on and so on and so on. So I'd be interested to hear, if you're still watching this, I would be interested to hear how it affects you and how you deal with it. Do you try to mitigate it? Do you just accept it? Do you just get through it with your head down and know that you will come out the other side? Do you take the pressure off yourself, or do you try to be cheerful about things? Do you make a big deal about Christmas and look forward to that? Do you go out for wonderful winter walks and enjoy the majesty of the scenic splendour that is definitely there in the winter? Certainly where I live in the Peak District, arguably the scenic splendour is more magnificent in winter than it is in summer. So I would love to know your thoughts or your experiences or your techniques. Right, well, we can do an interesting sociological experiment now, can't we? I've spent the day on my own, at home. I felt low, I felt depressed, unproductive, unmotivated, demotivated, and just glum and generally bloody miserable. So let's see how I feel after spending the night at work with people who cared about me and who I cared about. What's this person doing? There we go. cheerful in front of the customers, and let's see how I feel on the other side when I will be, I wonder who that is, when I will also be looking forward to a live stream and bottle of wine and all of that sort of thing. So I'm going to work. I will see you on the other side and see how I feel. Well, it's now much later and I'm driving home, and as I suspected I would, I'm feeling noticeably more positive. So, and I've been chatting with some of my colleagues during the odd quiet moment this evening, and it's clearly a very general thing, this tendency towards, I was going to say a tendency towards glumness. I don't think that's the right way to put it. I think that during the winter months you have, the bar is just set differently. So you've got a greater likelihood to feel negative. The bar is just set at a different level. So I think I began this by saying, is seasonal affective disorder a thing? Well, the conclusion has to be, or my conclusion has to be, then yeah, it is a thing. I don't think it's a thing as in a disorder. I think it's an entirely natural part of being human. But what is also pretty clear to me is that, like any other mental health issues, if you like, it is massively affected by your situation. Now, I spoke to younger colleagues and they surprised me by, one said, I said, do you tend to feel more sad, more depressed? This is a 21-year-old, huge, good-looking medical student, got everything going for him. Now, I wouldn't have thought in a million years that he would feel glum for a second over winter, but he said absolutely 100%. The tendency is absolutely there. And I spoke to another one of my colleagues who's another student in his final year, and he said that at first he said no, that he didn't feel differently, and then he changed his answer to yes, but it depends on circumstance. So, and the example he gave was, look, if it's really cold and dark outside and none of my mates can be bothered to go out, then yeah, I'm going to feel a bit depressed, because I know that in the summer when it's bright and light and warm outside, we'd be out there. So that's kind of my conclusion, that it's a thing, it's there, but it's mostly affected by your circumstances. So, and that kind of means that I've got the worst of every world. So there's an example. Now tonight I've been around people, I've been productive, I've been social, I've been professional, and after that period of time I'm feeling pretty positive. I'm feeling differently about certain things that are going on in my life. I'm feeling differently about them now at 11 o'clock at night than I was at 11 o'clock this morning, when I'd woken up, looked outside, it was foggy, damp, miserable, cold, and I had a day where I just felt down and lethargic and demotivated and couldn't be bothered to do anything, including eat a very simple lunch. So perhaps that's why it's more noticeably kicked in for me over these past few years when I've been entirely alone. I live in quite an isolated place, and you know, I'm facing up to all the things that I mentioned earlier, being middle-aged, your body falling apart on you, facing financial worries, regrets over life choices, all of that sort of thing. And as I said when I began talking about this, during the summer I'm fine. During winter it all kicks in, and I think that's why you just have a greater tendency, and the bar is just set that bit lower, because you're not being buoyed up by the lovely weather, the things you can do in the lovely weather. Finances, I'm sure, are a thing as well, because you can enjoy yourself more easily for free in summer than you can in winter. So that's kind of my long and rambling conclusion. But I've not really come up with any solutions or mitigations for me personally, how I can battle this winter depression and try and ensure that I am productive and that I'm not falling into the black hole of depression and all of the symptoms. So I'll kind of stop rambling there and I'll throw it over to you. I would love to hear your thoughts, experiences, and any workarounds or solutions or mitigations that you have found help you, or perhaps you think it's all bunkum and we should all just put our big boy or girl pants on and crack on with it. So there you go. Love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and thank you for listening to my slightly miserable ramblings. And as I climb up the hill, leaving behind the lights of civilization, relatively speaking, and head to my lonely little life in my lonely little cottage, you might think that this would be the most negative point of the day, and yet it isn't. Quite the opposite. It's the most positive, oddly enough. My lonely little cottage seems like a beautiful haven of peace, and I look forward to a glass of wine and a live stream with my amazing community who never fail to lift my spirits. I think the sociological term is Weltanschauung, meaning kind of a different point of view. The cottage feels different at this point at night than it did again at 11 o'clock this morning, but nice to end on a positive in a sense. But then of course there's always the next day. On that note, darlings, let me thank you for your company. It really wouldn't be the same without you. And let me wish you all a safe and peaceful night, and hopefully a positive day ahead. Do take any little bit of joy, any way and anyhow that you can from it. And above all, take care of yourselves and take care of those who you love or who love you. And if you are struggling, then keep those chins up as far as possible. Okay, much love from me, and I look forward to seeing you next time.